Sony faced a massive problem this year, and that's because of Concord. It lost them over $500 million and is the largest failure in the history of the industry. And while the Sony president is attempting to reflect on why Concord failed, they were really saved by two releases this year, Helldivers 2 and Black Myth Wukong. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, of course, it's not really a shocker to hear somebody behind one of these companies be completely out of touch with audiences and really not understanding some of the reasons why a game like Concord failed. So during a Q&A session following its latest financial earnings call, Sony management was asked numerous times questions about the live service game, which was shut down 11 days after launch. Now, there is no official confirmation that it cost them this much, but they bought the studio, they dumped a lot of money into it. It seems that that $500 million figure is a reality because they were really banking on this being the next Overwatch competitor, really taking the scene by storm and just being a massive launch, but it wasn't. It's a live service game that was a total flop out of the gate. And of course, we just had heard only a couple of days ago that Sony and PlayStation shut down the developer Firewalk Studios that they went out of their way to buy for Concord. So Totoki explained that the company's foray into live service games is still a learning process, and then it had to take lessons from what happened with Concord. Currently, we are in the process of learning. And basically, with regards to new IP, of course, you don't know the result until you actually try it. So for us, our reflection, we probably need to have a lot of gates, including user testing or internal evaluation and the timing of such gates, and we need to bring them forward, and we should have done those gates much earlier than we did going forward in our own titles and in third-party titles. We do have many different windows, and we want to be able to select the right and optimal windows so we can deploy them on our own platform without cannibalization so that we can maximize our performance in terms of title launches. But it did not matter when they released it, and it really didn't matter if they had these kind of quote gates set up if the base product is truly terrible, because if they had more user tests during the development process, while I think it could have been different, I don't necessarily think that this game in totality could have been ever a maximum success. First of all, they released it in a dominated space, right? If you're gonna play a hero shooter, you're gonna go to something like Overwatch. The upcoming Marvel's Rivals game is going to launch, and that's got a lot of hype behind it. And it had a really outdated price for the entry. It cost you $40 to play it when all of these other competitors are free to play. Now, I understand that, yes, they wanted to kind of follow this older hero shooter model, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a success now just because it was a decade ago. That's the price tag that Overwatch launched with initially, and I'm sorry, you have to constantly be ahead of the curve, and the curve is just free to play, especially for live service titles like this. And of course, we have it being heavily criticized because of identity politics. You had these really bad designs with these very narrative heavy character backstories, and we never even got to see the story mode. But yes, I mean, you also had on top of the identity politics and developers attacking gamers for not liking the identity politics, really mediocre and honestly standard maps. You had the very average gameplay and abilities. You did not have anything with this that was truly amazing. And then if you look at the titles that really saved their asses this year, there's a major difference. Like Helldivers 2, for example, look at the story, the art direction, how well polished it was versus Concord's terribly designed combat. And we also know that this year they pointed to a major success with Black Myth Wukong. And this is another title that really say that we do not know the console numbers, but we do know on Steam it had an all-time peak of 2.3 million gamers. So I would assume that they sold millions of copies on PlayStation as well. Sony's video game business saw impressive growth during the most recent financial quarter, boosted by sales of the blockbuster action game Black Myth Wukong that more than made up for the disastrous launch of Concord. Sony's Game and Network Services division, which includes PlayStation, brought in approximately $7 billion during the second quarter of the financial year. And of course, Sony is the largest company within the gaming industry, so they do definitely make a lot of money. As you can see, $7 billion. You also have to consider that that does also take into consideration the PlayStation 5 Pro console. I'm sure that going into the next quarter, we will see a bit of a dip, but Sony said the boost to revenue came from an increase in sales of non-first party games, including add-on content like microtransactions, as well as the impact of foreign exchange rates and an increase in sales from network services, mainly from PlayStation Plus. But yes, we do know that Black Myth Wukong is a major reason why Sony actually saw some success this quarter, but they obviously are a major company. They release a lot of games, which I totally understand, right? It's not like they're ever going to lose so much money that they're in danger of being shut down. It's like with the failure of Concord, that was never going to be some like major turning point for them. But when you hear this president reflecting on why Concord failed and he doesn't quite understand why, it makes me more worried for the future because I obviously want Sony to be great. I want every single company to do their best. I want them to release the best products. I want video games to be as amazing as possible. But he doesn't really make it sound like PlayStation actually learned from this failure. And it really is the Bob Iger effect, where, let's say, for argument's sake, Disney releases 5 major products a year. 3 of them might be complete and utter failures. They may bomb, but because 2 of them made billions of dollars, it emboldens him to continue to greenlight these products that, yes, push a certain message that he agrees with. Bob Iger is certainly somebody who does believe in putting the message first, and because he's still making billions of dollars every year with Disney, he is emboldened to greenlight more products like this. And I think that Sony is not as insidious. I don't necessarily believe that they only care about pushing a message, but I think that that is an element, and then they hire people that really only want to do that. And then, of course, you just have a president not understanding the scope of gaming culture right now. So it's kind of a mixture of bad news, and it's not creating a recipe for success for them. So yeah, I mean, while this president is reflecting on why Concord failed, he doesn't truly understand why. And of course, then you have the news that Sony's just going to see dollar signs again because of a game like Black Myth Wukong. This success hit big for them. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Black Myth Wukong is an amazing game, but it really only emboldens them to continue to try to make modern day slop like Concord, and completely ignoring why gamers did not actually like this title. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.